We are on Yud Gimel Amud Bet, almost right smack dab in the middle, okay, of the page. If you just put your finger right in the middle of the page, you'll pretty much find it. If you're following in the art scroll, we are on 13b2. So we finished this entire question of how a person behaves during the fasts, the fasts that people have in order to atone for a lack of rain when we're suffering in that way. So now the Gemara is moving on to another element of what it is that we do when it doesn't rain. And the Gemara says, Tzilota de Taanita hechi madkirinan. When the tzilota means praying. It's like we say it in the Kaddish, right? We use the word tzali, slotana. Okay, so the prayer of the Taanit. What's the prayer of the Taanit? That prayer is the Anenu tefillah. So if you fasted, you say Anenu Hashem, answer us, right? And there's a special tefillah that we insert, and you only say it if you're actually fasting. So tzlotah de Taanit hechem ad kirinan. Where is it placed? Where do you mention it? Adbe Rav Yehuda lerav. Rav Yehuda took Rav Yitzchak Bereh. He went with his son Vidarash, and he taught him. Yachid shekibel alav, a single person that accepted, an individual that accepted on themselves Taanit. Mitpalel shel Taanit. He prays the type of tefillah that a person who's fasting would pray, i.e., with the Anenu tefillah. Vehechan omra, so where does he say it? In the Amidah. Ben goel lerofe. In between, we say goel Yisrael, and we're saying Refeinu. So in between those two, you insert the tefillah of Anenu, and that means that it's not part of either of those blessings, but it's standalone in between those two berachot. Mat kifla Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak asked a question to go against what his father had said. V'chi yachid kovea bracha le'atzmo. You're an individual person. You decided you want to make some sort of a fast day. You think you're able to institute now a new beracha in between Goel and Refaenu? Ela Rav Yitzchak says, B'shomei tefillah. You say Anenu in the middle of the beracha of Shomei tefillah. Now the beracha of Shomei tefillah is a catch-all. It's Hashem we're thanking Hashem for the fact that He listens to our prayers, no matter what they might be about. So inserting a beracha into Shomei tefillah is legal. In fact, let's say you want to pray for an upgrade of your lease. No problem, Shomei tefillah. Let's say you want to pray that the Knicks should win the championship. You're not allowed to pray that, tefillat shav. Okay, there's all different things.
Can they reconnect Wi-Fi?
When they reconnect to Wi-Fi. Emmanuel, are you on the Wi-Fi?
I am on Wi-Fi.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's not.
So you might need to end it and reconnect it.
Can we do that?
Does that help? Wi-Fi.
Only because it keeps jumping.
Okay, you want to connect and reconnect? Okay, so Shomei tefillah is the catch-all.
I'm going to call you right back.
So Rav Yitzchak, what he explained was that a person has the opportunity to be able to pray in that way, okay? And because he has the opportunity to pray in that way, and it locks it in, so therefore, we're just going to throw the Anenu prayer into Shomei tefillah. V'chen amar Rav Sheshet. And so Rav Sheshet also held, B'Shomei tefillah. That's where you say it. You say it in Shomei tefillah. Now, my friends, I want to point out something super interesting over here. There's a machloket. The Gemara says elsewhere that a person a son has an obligation to honor and respect their father. And one of the ways that a person has an obligation to honor and respect their father is that you do not enos soter et devarav. You don't contradict his words. Not only that, there's a machloket. According to some opinions, you're not even supposed to agree with him. Because if you say, like as an example, let's say Avi's my dad. And Avi's like, this is the way that the architecture is going to work, and this is how it will step. This is what we should do. And I say, Avi's right. That makes it sound like he needs my opinion to bolster his opinion. He needs me to decide that he's right. Okay? That's minimizing the kavod for your father. So there's a machloket about agreeing, but everyone agrees that you're not allowed to disagree. So the question arises in halakha, what happens when a person is arguing with their father in matters of Torah? Is a child allowed to disagree with his father in Torah? So there's a Tshuvat Arosh which says very beautifully, the Tshuvat Arosh writes, Ki Torah Torat emetu. For Torah is a Torah of truth. Ve'en machnifin l'shum adan. And you don't pay homage to any man. Rather, you always search out the truth. In fact, the Vilna Gaon then brings examples from the Gemara of cases where you have a father who said a halakha and the son disagreed. So you see that you're allowed to argue on your father in matters of Torah. Interestingly enough, the Gemara that we just learned is an example of that. Because Rav Yehuda was walking with Rav Yitzchak, his son, and he taught that where does Anenu go between Goel Israel and Refaenu? Rav Yitzchak says, no, that can't be. He doesn't have the power to institute a new beracha in Amidah. So where do we put it? We put it in Shmona Esrei. And then the Gemara comes along and says, V'chein amar Rav Sheshet. That's how Rav Sheshet said. So Rav Sheshet is agreeing to the halakha of the son who argued against his father. So you would see from here a proof that a person has the ability to do that when it comes to matters of Torah. Of course, a person always needs to do it with respect, but at the same time, you do not hold back from sharing and practicing the right thing because the father said something else. The Gemara continues. Metve. Okay, so it seems like we're pretty set on this Shomea Tefillah response. Metve. En ben yachid litzibur. The Braita says there's no difference between an individual and a tzibur, a public fasting. Ela shezeh mitpalel shmona esrei. This one prays shmona esrei, v'zeh mitpalel tsha'esrei, and this one prays 19. One prays 18 and one prays 19. Now it's quite clear that what that means is that when the public is praying, it would sound, right, that Anenu is pronounced as a separate beracha, and therefore the Yachid prays 18, right, and therefore where does he put his Anenu? In Shomea Tefillah. And the Tzibur, the community, where do they put their Anenu? Anenu goes in what's it called? In its own bracha between Goel and Refaenu, and that's why that's praying 19. The Gemara. So therefore, it seems like it's a proof against Rav Yitzchak and Rav Sheshet. The Gemara says, "My Yachid u'may Tzibur." Well, that depends on how you understand Yachid and Tzibur in this Braita. What does that mean? Ilem Yachid mamash. If Yachid over here means specifically Yachid, actually a person, a single person who's reciting, Anenu in Amidah. Fit Tzibur, Shaliach Tzibur. And when the word Tzibur means the Shaliach Tzibur, the person who's leading the prayers by the Teba. Hanit Sha'esre, right? Are these berachot 19? No. Esrim va'arba havu. There's 24 blessings. Why is he saying there's 24 blessings? And the Gemara says that at the time they had 6 extra blessings on top of the 18 that were added to the Amidah when they had a fast day. So if it's talking about, Tzibur is talking about the Shaliach Tzibur, that can't be because it wasn't 19, it was 24. Ela lav achi ka'ama. This is what it means. En ben yachid dekabel alav ta'anit yachid. There's no difference between a yachid who accepts upon himself a fast of a yachid. We said as an example, if he had a very bad dream or he was doing teshubah, so that's a single person doing a fast for a single person reasons, right? Li yachid shekibel alav ta'anit tzibur, or an individual, a single person who accepted on himself Taanit Tzibur, a public fast. How could an individual accept the public fast? He's not the public. The answer is that he accepted upon himself the type of fast that the public would fast. So in other words, he accepted a type of fast which was public, but not actually a public fast. Ela, on that, the Braita says, there's no difference. Ela shizem mitpalel shmona esrei. This one prays 18, and this one prays 19. But there are no other differences if a person says, I'm accepting on myself the type of fast which is a Ta'anit Tzibur, not a Yachid type of fast. So therefore, that would not disprove anything with regards to Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Sheshet. Shma mina, we see from here, Yachid kovea bracha le'atzmo. But it turns out that in this explanation of the Braita, a single person is indeed setting up a beracha, an extra beracha and amidah for himself. Because he took on himself the type of fast of a tzibur. And what did we say when he did that? He makes a 19th bracha. So you see that the basis upon which Rav Yitzchak argued against his father, Rav Yehuda, is refuted by the Braita. Answers the Gemara, no. Le'olam emalecha. Rather, always I will tell you, shaliach tzibur. It's referring to shaliach tzibur when it says public fast. Udikakashelach, not you asked, shliach tzibur 24 misaleh. The shaliach tzibur prays 24 blessings on the day of a Taanit, not the 19. So therefore you have that question with that interpretation. Begimel Ta'aniyot Rishonot, in the first 3 Ta'aniyot, remember we said the first 3 red lines that we need the rain by this point, or by this point, right? Deleka Esrim V'arba. You don't have the 24 blessings of the fast day, the urgency of all those berachot until after those 3 are done. So therefore, at that moment, what does the Shaliach Tzibur recite? 19 berachot. What does the Yachid himself recite? 18 berachot. So therefore, it's not a question on Rav Yitzchak and Rav Sheshet. Velo, ask the Gemara, is that the case? That the first 3 ta'aniyot, the first 3 fasts, on those first 3 dates that we say you have to have rain by this time, otherwise it shows that it's a siman kelala. The Gemara says, Velo, is that the case? V'ha'en ben katani. The Braita said there's no difference between these two things. En ben gimel rishonot legimel emsaiyot, ela shebe'elu mutarim b'asiyat melacha, ube'elu asurim b'asiyat melacha. We read the Mishnah just now. The Mishnah said there's no difference between the first 3 fasts and the second 3 fasts. And what difference did we distinguish between them? The difference was that one of them is asurim b'melacha, and one of them is mutar in asiyat melacha, which would indicate that there are no other differences, because you said and ben, there's no difference other than not working, which would mean that it can't be that there's a discrepancy between the way we pray in the first 3 and in the second 3, because then the Mishnah would have had to say them. The Gemara then continues, and the Gemara says, Ha lechafdalit. The 24 zeh shavin, right? They must be the same, and if they're the same, then you're left with a question, because it can't be that the Braita was saying Shaliach Tzibur 19 using your answer of the first 3, because the Mishnah seems to say that they're the same. The Gemara says no. Tana v'shayar. The Mishnah, it said what it said, v'shayar, and it left over other things. Shayar is like shiur, like the extra that you have, left she'eriot, the extra that you have, the leftovers. So the Mishnah, it said en ben, but it didn't mean, it wasn't an exhaustive list. It was saying they're pretty much the same, but it wasn't saying you won't find any difference between them whatsoever. And you know what? Indeed, actually, there is a difference, and that other difference is 24 first berachot. 24 berachot in the Amidah, the Shaliach Tzibur, that happens in the second set of 3 days and not the first. Gemara says, "My shayr, the high shayr." If you want to say that the Tana wasn't being exclusive, he wasn't giving an exhaustive list, can you prove this fact? Do you have anything else that he left over that you should say that Tana was leaving stuff over? Like, someone says to you, like, you made an order, why don't you order the peanuts? The guy says, well, like, I didn't order the peanuts, I wasn't ordering everything. I also needed tape, I wasn't ordering tape. So my shayr, the high shayr, what did you leave over that you should be able to say that you're in the leaving over state of mind, and therefore you left this over as well? Veha en ben katani. It doesn't say that this is the difference. It doesn't say, as an example, these 3 have this, and these 3 have this. And then you could say, it said this, but it didn't say this. You said en ben. En ben means there's no difference between. Illustrating specifically that you're saying that this is the only difference. Ela, the Gemara says, Tana be'isuri kamairi. The Mishnah was saying, in things that are asur, there's no difference. And therefore, en ben is an exhaustive list. It's telling you there's no difference between these two fasts in the things that are forbidden. And there's nothing that it left out. It just wasn't talking b'tefilot lo ma'iri. The Mishnah was not talking about tefillot. So therefore there could still be a difference between the two, and it's not a question of the fact that it says en ben. V'ibayit ema, and if you want to say, we can have another explanation, another answer. Be'emtzaita nami lo misale chaf daled. The middle three, remember there's three sets of three. The first set of three, then the second set of three. The first set of three, we don't do it. The second set of three, also, we don't pray the 24 blessings. So, when you say, en ben, the first three and the second three, it's true even about tefillot. Because we're not going to add the 24 berachot, even in the 23rd, even in the second set of three. The Gemara says, is that the case? So therefore, again, we could have an answer for Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Sheshet. The Gemara says, Velo, is that the case? Is that the case? I mean, it's convenient for you to give that answer. But is that the case, actually? That we don't do 24 berachot in the middle set of three fasts? Velo v'hatanya en ben gimel sheniyot l'sheva achironot. Remember, there was 3, 3, and 7. En ben gimel sheniyot l'sheva achironot. The Braita continues, not in the Mishnah, but the Braita continues on this thread and says, there's no difference between the second set of 3, which is, in other words, the middle set, and the last 7. Ela shebe'elu matrein v'no'alin et hachanuyot, that we blow the shofar and we cry out, we say the tefillot, v'no'alin et hachanuyot, and we lock up the stores. Remember we learned that Braita? We lock up the stores, and we talked about if it's on a Monday or on a Thursday when they open the stores. So at that point they lock the stores. So you see, you see that the Mishnah, it was talking about not just things that you don't do, but also things that you do, because matri'in is not isurin. Matri'in is crying out, is praying. So it's talking about tefillah, and not only that, it tells you that there's no difference between the middle set and the last set, indicating that if there's chaf dalet in the last set, then there's chaf dalet in the middle set. And you can't answer the answer that you said before, which was that it's only saying en ben with isurin. V'chi tema. Now, I see you coming for me. Okay? I see that you're going to try and answer. V'chi tema hachanami, and if you want to say hachanami tana v'shaya, over here too, also, it said some and it left over some, and what it left over was this differential of chaf daled. V'ha en ben katani. It says en ben. So it can't be that that's the case. Okay, so are we clear so far? Let's kind of hit reverse for 1 second.
That's tough.
Okay, so it's a chain reaction. Okay, watch this. Let's go back just for 1 second. Let's start again. Rabbi Yitzchak and Rav Sheshet say that you say the beracha for a yachid in every case. The yachid, when does he say it? He says it in Shomei Tefillah. He doesn't add any extra berachot. A yachid, because the yachid has no koach to add extra berachot. Says the Mishnah. So we brought the Mishnah. What are you talking about? The Braita. The Braita says that that the yachid, he says 18, and the tzibur they say 19. The Gemara says 1 second. So what does tzibur mean? Tzibur means shaliach tzibur. Excuse me. Maybe the Gemara is trying to say that the yachid who accepts on himself a Taanit yachid says 18, but a yachid who accepts on himself the type of fast, the public fast, he does 19. So you see explicitly that the Mishnah says that a yachid can add a beracha. And that doesn't fit with what Rav Sheshet and what Rabbi Yitzchak were teaching. The Gemara said, no, that's not what tzibur means over there. That's not what it means. It actually means a full-on tzibur, a public fast. So the Gemara said, but that can't be a good answer for your question, and that's how you're getting out of the fact that the yachid could add a beracha. The Gemara says that can't be. Why? Because if it's talking about an actual tzibur, right? The tzibur does 24, not 19. So your answer to say that it's a yachid doing, to the fact that I said it's yachid tzibur who's doing a public fast and he could add another barakah, you try to make it into a fast of a tzibur. But if it's a fast of a tzibur, then the shaliach tzibur doesn't say 19 barakot, he says 24 barakot. So what do you do with that?
The yachid add only on the shomea tefillah a paragraph, but it's not a bracha by itself.
So you missed the beginning. That was the argument. Where do we add it? And how do we add it? So we're coming to that. You know that from the halakha, but the Gemara is now in the process of creating that halakha and deciding it. So we have a braita that leaves us with a problem because it says yachid 18, then it says tzibur 19. The Gemara assumed that it meant a yachid fasting for his own needs or yachid fasting for the tzibur's needs 19. So you see the kid beracha. Why did the Gemara assume that? Because if it actually meant shaliach tzibur, the chazan on a Taanit of the tzibur would say 24 berachot. So the Gemara says, no, I have a way out of it. What are we talking about? We're not talking about a general Taanit tzibur. We're talking about the Taaniyot of the fasting of the rain. And there, the Taanit doesn't say 24 berachot. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. You're telling me that he only says the 24 berachot in the second set of 3. So we're talking over here in the first set of 3. So the first set of 3 is 19, second set of 3 is 24, and therefore I'm able to answer, right, that the 19 is not talking about a yachid. This is our whole problem here, you see? I have a braita that says that a yachid could say a 19th beracha. So your answer to that is that no, it's not a yachid, it's shaliach tzibur. The problem is, shaliach tzibur says 24. So now we have to figure out a way of having the shaliach tzibur in the braita say 19. The Gemara says, oh, it's talking about the first 3 out of the set of fasts. Gemara says that can't be. Why? Because I have a Mishnah that says that the first 3 and the second 3 and ben, there's no difference between them. Which means that if there's 24 berachot in the middle 3, then there's 24 in the first 3. So you don't have a place to shove this Mishnah to get out of my proof against you. Is that clear?
Yes.
So the Gemara says, no, the answer is, it says in Ben there's no difference, but there is a difference. It just wasn't saying all the differences. The Gemara says, well, can you show me another difference that it skipped? So that I should buy this argument of Tana v'Shayar? Not only that, it says the words and Ben, there's no difference between the two. So the Gemara's response to that was, okay, I hear what you're saying. The answer is, and Ben is correct. But the first 3 and the second 3, both of them don't have 24. Now we're riding high because the Mishnah does not say and Ben, the second 3, to the last 7. So the last 7 you say 24. First 3 and the second 3 you say 19. Therefore the braita that says shaliach tzibur is 19 is not talking about a yachid, a single person, which would prove that a single person can add a beracha to the thing, which would be a question for us. It's talking about a shaliach tzibur, but on the first 3 or the second 3 fasts that we fast for the rain. Gemara says, sorry dude, I have a braita that says there's no difference between the second 3 and the last 7.
Whoa.
Do you see how this is evolving step by step? It's like a chess match. You want to go here, you can't go here. I get you this way. You want to go over there, can't go there. Got you that way. So they're literally, it's like a logical boxing match. All right? Trying to find a way to be able to reconcile my opinion with what the Gemara is saying. Okay? So the Gemara said, no. And Ben over there is talking about, and the Gemara says, and if you want to tell me that and Ben is talking about is Tana v'Shayar, what did it leave over that you're telling me that it left over other things? And really there is a difference. Not only that, v'tizbira, and if you wanted, do you hold and ben dafka that there's no difference when it says en ben, it means literally en ben? That's what you want to tell me? In order to keep me from having my opinion? V'hashayir teva. The Gemara says, I could easily prove to you that en ben, en ben was not an exhaustive list because there is something else. What is there something else? Teva. They used to take the ark, the bima, and they would put it in the town square, in the middle of the town, for the last set of 7, but not for the middle or for the first. So therefore you see clearly that in the middle section of 3 fasts and in the 7 fasts, there's something else that differentiates them that the Mishnah did not say. Because it says en ben, except for prayers and what's it called? And closing the stores. So you want to tell me that means that proves that there's 24 berachot in the middle, in the last, which proves that there's 24 in the middle. And if there's 24 in the middle, we already have a Mishnah that says that there's no difference between the first and the second. That means there's 24 in the first. There's no place for you to say tzibur is going to be 19. But I found you something else. The Gemara says, imishum teva. If you're going to tell me that teva shows me that en ben is not exhaustive list, and therefore I can also stick in mind lav shiurahu. That's not a shiura. That's not leaving something over. Mili ditzinah katani. The Braita was telling us about things that happen ditzinah in private. Mili befarhesia lo katani. It wasn't telling you about things that are happening in the public. Now I don't understand what that means, because what's in public that we mentioned?
Locking the stores.
Locking the stores. Okay? Amar Rav Ashi. Amar Rav Ashi. So therefore, where are we now? So we don't have a leftover. So we're back with our question. That disproves Rav Sheshet and Rav Yitzchak. Amar Rav Ashi, matnita nami deka. Our Mishnah also is miduyak like this. Dekatani, because it says, ma elu yiterot al rishonot. In what way are these more than the first fasts? Okay? The last set, more than the previous. By these, they pray, okay? And they lock up the stores. However, by everything else, everything else, they're the same. Okay? So even though it doesn't say en ben on the second to the third, it says, in what way are they more strict? And then it says this. So it's kind of like it says en ben. So therefore, you're a little bit stuck because I have 24 in the last, which means 24 in the middle, and then 24 in the middle says en ben, so I get to the first set of 3, in which case you have no scenario of 19. The Gemara says, V'chitem, and if you're going to answer Hachana Mitana, over here also Tana V'shai, you left over, right? V'hama elu katani. It says, ma elu. Right? In what way are these fasts more strict? Which indicates, again, that there is no differences. V'tizbra, says the Gemara, is that what you think? Ma elu dafkau. It means specifically, literally, that there's nothing else. V'ashai la teva. It left over the teva. So the teva is not mentioned. So therefore, again, we're back to where we were before. Mishum teva, the Gemara says, lav shura. It's not. That's not something that it left out. Mishum dekachashiv la beidach pirka. Because we're actually going to mention this difference later on. So when the Mishnah tells you that these are the differences between this, and then it continues and tells it to you later, then you know that the Mishnah later on is going to express exactly all the things that are different. But it expressed the teva, and it didn't express your 24 verses 19 nuance. So now that we got to this place, if that's the case, so 24 is also not an emission. Because it also says 24 later on in the same place it says teva. So if you buy that teva was left out, then you have to buy that 24 was also left out. Okay, so let's go back. My havi Allah. So now that we're at this place where we have an answer, we don't have an answer, we have a proof against, we answered up the proof against. You basically have a machlok between Rabbi Yitzchak and his father of Yehuda. My havi ala. What is the halacha? What do we do with this? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Sasartai, Rav Yishruel, the son of Sasartai, said, Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amarav, and Rav Chia bar Ashi also said in the name of Rav, Ben Goel L'Rofeh. So Yachid, when does he say Anenu? He says it in between the Beracha of Goel and Rofeh, which is a separate blessing. Rav Ashi Mishmed Rav Yanai Bered Rabbi, and Rav Ashi says the name of Rav Yanai, the son of Rabbi Ishmael, B'Shomea Tefillah. We say it in Shomea Tefillah. Hilcheta halacha is B'Shomea Tefillah. So the Gemara actually is posek that when does an individual say the Beracha of Anenu? He says Beracha of Anenu in Shomea Tefillah, and he does not add an extra Beracha. So we are not yet at a stage where we understand why our halachic practice is for a tzibur, shaliach tzibur, to say it in Anenu. We don't yet know what the proof of that is. We've only taken the opinion that with regards to a yachid, where does he say it? He says it in Shomea Tefillah. Tani Chada. The Gemara now goes on and starts talking about what happens to people who are excluded from the fast. Tani Chada. We have one braita that says, Ubarot umenikot mit'anot barishonot, that someone who is pregnant and someone who is nursing, mit'anot, they fast barishonot in the first set of 3. Ve'en mit'anot, in the first fast days, ve'en mit'anot ba'acharonot, and they don't fast in the later fast days. V'tanya idach, and we have another braita that's taught, mit'anot ba'acharonot, ve'en mit'anot barishonot, they fast in the later ones, but not in the first ones. V'tanya idach, and we have another braita that says, en mitanot lo barishonot lo ba'acharonot. They don't fast not in the first ones and not in the last ones. What are we supposed to do with that? A braita that says they fast first but not last. A braita that says fast but not first. A braita that says not first, not last. Amar Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi says, Nikot emtsaita biyadach. Take the middle in your hands. Dimitartzun kulu, because all the braitot are explained with this braita. So what does that mean? Okay, so let's look at Rashi for 1 second. Rashi explains what this means. Klomar, you see it right smack in the middle, Rashi? Right in the middle of the page?
Yeah.
Klomar, Tritz explain, the bishalosh emtzayot hayu mit'anin, they would fast the middle 3 fasts. Umitartzot lekulu, and it answers all hanach mitnita from the braita. Hadikatani barishonot lo ba'acharonot. When the braita says that they fast first but not last, hanach rishonot lav rishonot mamash doesn't refer to the first set of 3. Ninu elam tzayot. It's referring to the middle ones. Inu havi rishonot la'acharonot. They are first to the last set of 3. Aval b'sheva acharonot lo mitanu. They don't fast. The kivan the sheva ninu. There's 7 lo matzi ubarot umenikot lemekam bahu. They can't fast so many fast days because they're weaker. V'had the katani, and the other part of the braita, that says ba'acharonot they fast the last, but not the first. Hanach acharonot. It doesn't mean the last, i.e. the 7, which is last of the 3. It means last to the first ones, because you have the first set of 3 that they're going to skip. Rishonot mamash. So what does the first ones mean? That they're not fasting. That means the first set of 3. They don't fast at that stage. Because at that stage, we're not in such a dire scenario where they have to fast. So it's kind of like it's getting serious. So let's let the healthy people fast. It's maybe a kind of loose expression. It's just a little bit of a loose language. So imagine a person has 3 daughters, right? And the person says, I love, one time he says, I love my youngest daughter, right? And not my oldest daughter. I love my young daughter, not my old daughter. Then one time he says, I love my old daughter, right? And I don't love my young daughter. And then he says, I don't love my young daughter and I don't love my old daughter. What's the answer to the riddle? It means he loves his middle daughter. Let's go through it. I love my young daughter and not my old daughter means I love my middle one and not my last. it's referring to her as young because it's younger than the last. He says, I love my old daughter, not my young daughter. He loves his middle daughter, who's older than the young one, which is the first one. But not my young daughter, which is the first one. Then he says, I don't love my young daughter, I don't love my old daughter. It means the youngest and the oldest. But I love my middle daughter. So the way Rav Sheshet is explaining it is the halacha is that the ubarot and the menikot, those that are pregnant and those that are fasting would fast in the middle set of 3. Okay, let's carry on. Ma elu yiterot, the Mishnah says, Ma elu yiterot al harishonot. In what way are the middle ones, are these, the second set, the last set, more strict than the first ones? That with these, they scream and they lock the fast. But my matri'in, with what? What does that mean that they cry out? Okay, the word matri'in could mean scream, it can also mean that they blow shofar. Rav Yehuda says b'shofarot, they blow shofarot. Rav Yehuda bered Rav Shmuel b'ashelat mishmed Rav Amar. Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel, not to be confused with the Rav Yehuda who just said b'shofarot, b'ashelat mishmed Rav. He said in the name of Rav, be'anenu. It means that they cry out, but it means that they cry out with the special prayer of anenu. Okay, they do it out loud. Yes.
Wouldn't the last 7, if they went through the first 3, no rain, then they went to the next, no rain, wouldn't the last 7 be the most stringent anyway, because it's like your last and final attempt?
So what are you asking that with regards to the pregnant women?
Or you're saying why where we said why is the last 7 the most stringent? Wouldn't the last 7 have to be the most stringent because it's the last attempt to get rain?
Where did you see a question like that? No, it's not asking in what way, in why are they more strict. It's asking what practical halachic ways are they different.
Okay.
Okay? So of course they are the most strict and the most stringent. They are the most important because we're further along the no rain path. Correct? Right?
But actually they're not the most stringent for women because they're so long.
For pregnant women and menikot, right, they're not the most stringent. But the answer is actually they are the most stringent. It's just that they can't handle it. Right, it's not less stringent. It's more stringent. Just there's more of them, so the ladies couldn't do it. What I always wondered is, why don't we make them fast 3 out of the last 7? If they can handle 3, so make them fast 3, but make them fast 3 out of the last 7.
Or the last 3.
Or the last 3. So either arbitrary, or the first 3 of the 7, or the last 3 of the 7, but it should be in the most serious category. I think the answer is that they wanted them to have something complete. And therefore, right, there's no completion if they do 3 out of 7.
Maybe that also, another idea might be that the whole koach of the tefillah is tefillah d'tzibur. If you suddenly have some people davening 3, some people not davening, some people fasting 3 and some fasting 7, you have as if you have futzot. No, the whole thing is, whoever's fasting is fasting 7 together.
Okay, all right. The allotted go to do, I like it. Beautiful. Okay, let's carry on. So the Gemara says with anenu. Now we know we say anenu in all of them, but it doesn't mean that you say anenu. It means that you say anenu, but you scream it out. Matri'in, okay? Kasal kadaitan, man da amar be'anenu, lo amar b'shofarot. We used to think that the second opinion over here of Yehuda, Reder of Shmuel, he was translating matri'in as they say anenu out loud, but he meant that that's what matri'in means, and therefore you don't blow the shofar. But actually, uman da amar b'shofarot, and the person who says shofarot, lo amar b'anenu, he said that they did not yell out anenu out loud. V'atanya, but we learned in the Braita, en pochatim misheva ta'aniyot al tzibur, we do not do less than the 7 fasts on the tzibur, shebahen yud chet hatraot, because in those 7 fasts there are 18 hatraot crying outs, v'siman ledavar Yericho, and a siman for this 18 fasts is Yericho. Take a look at Rashi, 5 lines down in the bottom berachot. 4 lines down. Shmona esrei hatraot. What does it mean? 18 crying out. Shehen mosifin vav berachot miyudchet ad chavdalet. Because they would add 6 blessings, right, onto the 18 that we had until there was 24. V'chol achad shalosh teruot, and each one of those 7 blessings had 3 tiruot. So there would be 18 hatraot. V'siman ledavar shelo tit'eh, that you should not make a mistake im hatra'a hazu tiru'a u'tefilah, that you should not make a mistake as to what this refers to. Yericho, think of Jericho. Tichativ ba, that says by Yericho shofarot. It says specifically that they use shofarot. Lishna achrina, another way of saying this. Siman davar, klomar, what does it mean, siman davar? Lakach matri'in, this is why we blow, kidei sheya'anu, in order they should be answered, kederech shene'enu b'Yericho al yidei shofarot, in the way that they were answered in Yericho for shofarot, that the mechitzot fell down. V'chtiv, that says that they blew in the shofarot, v'chtiv, v'tipol hachoma tachteh, and the wall fell at its feet. Okay? So therefore, the Braita says you don't do less than 7 ta'aniyot, and on those ta'aniyot you have Yud Chet Hatraot, which means they blew the shofar 3 times for each one of the 6 blessings that they would add. V'Yericho shofarot hava, and Yericho we know had shofarot. So too over here they have shofarot. So you see that this knocks out the opinion that says matri'in means that they would add a prayer of anenu into the tefillah and they would cry it out without shofarot. Now the Gemara says, Ela, no, b'shofarot dekuli ama lo pligi dekare lehatra. Everyone agrees that matri'in includes shofarot. Okay, so therefore the second opinion that said anenu out loud, he didn't mean as opposed to the shofarot. He meant in addition. Ki pligi, where do they disagree? Ba'anenu. The difference between them then is the first opinion held shofarot but not anenu. The second opinion held shofarot and anenu. Okay? Umasavar lo kare lehatra. So one opinion held, right? Marsavar, Rav holds kare lehatra. You call that, you call anenu crying out. So when the Mishnah talks about both of those, it means that Marsavar, other opinions, lo kari lehatra, that you don't, the Tana would not call anenu crying out. So whenever we say crying out, it means a shofar. The Gemara now continues. According to the opinion that says crying out means with the anenu tefillah, kol shekem b'shofarot. Certainly, of course, it should be done with shofar. Manda amar b'shofarot, ava b'anenu lo. The other opinion says, if you say shofarot, it means dafka shofarot and not anenu. Is that clear so far? Everyone follow where we went? We had one opinion said shofar, the other opinion said anenu. The Gemara thought in the initial stages that the opinion says shofar does not say hold that hatra'a means anenu. Opinion says anenu does not hold hatra'a means shofar. The Gemara disproves it because we have a Braita that says that you would blow the shofar on the 7 fasts. So the other anenu guy is now left high and dry because the Braita says explicitly that you have to blow the shofar on the 7 fast days at the end of the rainless cycle. So the Gemara then says, no, one second. Of course he agrees that matri'in does not mean without a shofar. It means with a shofar, but it means that we add on top of it, we add the anenu. And then the Gemara then says what it means is that kol shekem b'shofarot, and one opinion says that you do anenu, but of course with the shofarot you will fulfill it. Another opinion says shofarot yes, but anenu lo. Now the Gemara says va'atanya, if you want to tell me that you could do anenu and anenu is actually called hatra'a, v'atanya, the Braita teaches v'shar kol minei puraniyot hamitragshot, all of the other punishments hamitragshot that come to the people, kegon chikuch, scenarios where a person that everyone is itching, they're suffering from rashes, chagav, when there's all sorts of locusts coming and eating up all the foods, zevuv, flies, tzir'ah, which is like a wasp or something which has a very difficult bite, vitushin, and mosquitoes, vishiluach nechashim v'akrabim, when there's snakes and scorpions that are coming, lo hayu matri'in ela tzoakin. In those cases, lo hayu matri'in, it says they wouldn't be matriya ela tzoakin, but they would yell. So the Mishnah, the Braita clearly is distinguishing between tzoakim with your mouth and matri'in, illustrating that tzoakim, which could be anenu, is not the same as matri'in, which sounds like it's a shofar, which means that prayer could never be called matri'in. So the opinion that says that you say anenu and he sticks it in the word matri'in, you see from here that matri'in and tzoakin are not the same thing. Mid tzeaka bepeh, if tzeaka means with the mouth, hatra b'shofarot, it means hatra is only with shofarot. So therefore, the opinion that says anenu is nullified, cancelled out. Gemara answers, Tanaihi. It's a machloket Tanaim. So therefore, even though you have a Braita, you have a Mishnah that says that, if I could find another Mishnah or another Braita where a Tana agrees with the opinion of Rav, then he doesn't need to reconcile himself with your Mishnah, because that's a disagreeing opinion. Titanya al elu matrim b'Shabbat. For these things, a person cries out. For these troubles, these problems, a person is matria even on Shabbat. Al ir shikifua gayas. When they took a city and they laid siege to it, they surrounded it with troops. Or nahar, or if you have a situation where the river flooded an area, the sfina metorefet bayam, or a ship that is being tossed from wave to wave, and they think they're going to drown. Rabbi Yossi Omer le'ezra. And Rabbi Yossi says, le'ezra, they're allowed to scream out to other people, for help. Avalo le'tzeaka. But they don't call out HaKadosh Baruch Hu in tefillah on Shabbat. Why? Because the Shabbat day is so holy that you're going to ruin it, and who knows if that was for something or for nothing.
But the pikuach nefesh, what's the difference?
It's a very good question. So if you look at Rashi has one answer to this question. Rashi's answer is that of course you pray. You just don't pray in the tzibur in the Bet Knesset, because you're turning the day into a sad day, bifarhesia. Same way a person has the halachot on Shabbat of avelut. So during the Shiv'ah on Shabbat doesn't interfere with the avelut. You're just not allowed to have public expressions of avelut. So you ruin the spirit of Shabbat in public. But the person's still wearing the clothing of avelut underneath his suit and his tie. So he's dressing up nicely on the outside, but on the inside, right, he has everything, is in the avelut state of mind. So according to Rabbi Yossi, that's one answer. The other answer is, it's true pikuach nefesh. But for pikuach nefesh, we violate Shabbat in a way which helps the pikuach nefesh. So let's say you have to do surgery. So you do the surgery, even though it's breaking Shabbat.
If you are in Sfina, Torefet,
Yeah.
don't think twice. Oh, wait, it's Shabbat. I'm not going to scream. Of course, you scream. You're going to do anything. You are a sakanat chayim.
Odapam. The fact that you're going to do something doesn't mean that there isn't a halakha. There's a halakha, and if the guy goes crazy, so you go in crazy, and we're not going to judge him. You understand? But what's the appropriate thing to do? So Rabbi Yossi is saying the appropriate thing to do is not to have a big minyan on the boat and have a public tefillah. Rather, that every person should be praying privately. And again, what I always found is that we have this exact point on Rosh Hashanah. We know that the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, it brings us rachamim, nachon? So it's pikuach nefesh. Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is deciding you can live another year. So why don't we blow the shofar because it's pikuach nefesh on Shabbat? Yeah. What do Chachamim explain? The Chachamim explain that in that moment, when the person is praying when the person's in Bet Knesset and they're not using the shofar and they're keeping Shabbat properly, the power of keeping the sanctity of Shabbat becomes like a shofar for him.
Bam.
The fact that he was willing to keep Shabbat and not blow shofar, even though he's in such a difficult situation, that in and of itself is something which stands him in. That is his pikuach nefesh. Okay, b'mai. The Gemara says, with what? What does it mean that they cry? Ilena b'shofarot. If you're telling me that it means b'shofarot, the pasuk says, right? What does it say? It says le'ezra. Avalo le'tzeaka. And what does it say? Sorry, al elu matri'im b'Shabbat. So for those things, you're allowed to be matri'a b'Shabbat. The Gemara says, b'mai, ilema b'shofarot, if it means shofar, are you allowed to blow shofar on Shabbat? Ela, therefore, Rav Yossi must be saying, lav ba'anenu. It means anenu, v'kari le'hatra. And he calls it hatra. Shema Aminah, we learn from here that when you say anenu out loud, according to Rabbi Yossi, that also counts as the word hatra. So we'll continue with this Be'ezrat Hashem next week. But one answer might be that.
So you're allowed to add anenu on Shabbat.
Sorry.
So according to this, you're allowed to add anenu on Shabbat.
Correct. In certain cases.
Instead of blowing shofar.
In certain cases, that's the So for these things, you would say anenu out loud on Shabbat, but not blow with the shofar. Okay. Now, by the way, what if there's another boat far away? Your boat's drowning. The boat's over there. Fadal, blow the shofar. Pikuach nefesh. You're trying to get their attention. Of course you will blow, because you're using the object for the pikuach nefesh state in a natural way. Of course you're obligated to do that. But what we're talking about is over here where you're using the shofar to arouse heavenly mercy. Don't break the halakha to arouse heavenly mercy. That's really the point. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll pick it up from here next week. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.